Jim had attention deficit disorder. When he came to see me at the age of 32, he had been living a life of chronic underachievement, falling short of his goals both at work and in relationships because of an underlying neurological problem that made it difficult for him to pay attention, sustain effort, and complete tasks. When Jim came for consultation, he was at wit's end. He sat down in one of the easy chairs and began to run his fingers through his curly hair. He leaned forward, alternately looking at me or staring at the floor. "I don't know where to begin. I don't even know what I'm doing here," he said, shaking his head as if to say, "No, this won't help either." "Did you have any trouble finding your way here?" I asked. He was 20 minutes late, so I figured he might have gotten lost. Yes, I did," he said. "Your directions were fine. It wasn't your fault. I just turned left where I should have turned right, and then I was gonzo. School was out. It's a miracle I got here at all. I ended up at some gas station in Somerville." "Well, it can be pretty confusing," I said, hoping to let him relax a bit. "Of the people who consult with me for problems related to ADD, probably about a half are either late for their first appointment or miss it altogether. I've come to expect it. It comes with the territory. My patients, however, usually feel very bad about it, and so begin the session thinking that I'm going to reprimand them in some way." "You certainly aren't the first person to get lost coming here," I said. "Really?" he asked. "That's good to hear." He took a deep breath to say something, but paused, as if the words had crowded in his throat, then let his breath out in a long sigh, the words apparently dispersed. He went through the same cycle a second time before I asked him if maybe he could use a few moments just to collect his thoughts, while I wrote down some bits of information about him, like his name, address, and telephone number. That seemed to help. "Okay," Jim said. "Let's start." "Okay," I responded, leaning back in my chair, folding my hands behind my head. There was another long pause, and another sigh from Jim. "I can see that it's hard for you to get started," I said. "Maybe we could focus on what the problem is that brought you here." "Yes," he said, "okay." With that little bit of prodding from me, Jim began to fill in most of his history. A normal childhood, or so it seemed to him. But when I pressed him for more detail, Jim acknowledged that he was quite rambunctious in grade school and enjoyed getting into mischief. He got good grades, even though he never really studied. In high school, he began to fall behind. He started to get lectures from his teachers and parents on his moral shortcomings, how he was letting himself and everyone else down, how, in the long run, he'd be the worse for it, and so forth. His self-esteem fell, although somehow his inborn temperament was buoyant enough to keep him fairly upbeat. After stumbling through college, he began a long series of jobs in various computer-related fields. "You like computers?" I asked. "I could have invented them," he said with great enthusiasm. "I love them. I know what makes them tick, and I know how to get the most out of them. If only I could tell people what I know. If only I didn't screw up every time I get a chance." "How do you screw up?" I asked. "How do I screw up?" he asked, then repeated the question again, turning it into a sorrowful statement by his tone of voice. "How do I screw up? I forget. I argue. I postpone. I procrastinate. I get lost. I get mad. I don't follow through. You name it, I do it. I'll get into these discussions with my boss, and I'll see my way is right. And the next thing you know, I'm calling him a stupid jerk for not seeing that I'm right. Tends to get you fired, calling your boss a stupid jerk. Or I'll have this idea, but I won't be able to find it, like it's a jumble lost in the closet or something. I want to get it out. I try to get it out, but I can't. One of my old girlfriends told me before she left me that I should face it. I'm just a loser. Maybe she's right. I don't know." "Have you ever consulted a psychiatrist before?" I asked. "A couple of times," Jim said. "They were nice guys, but nothing really changed. One of them told me not to drink so much." "How much do you actually drink?" "I binge. When I really want to let loose, I go out and tie one on." This sounded familiar to me. Often people with ADD self-medicate with alcohol or marijuana or cocaine. Jim began to cross and uncross his legs a lot as we talked. "If you're feeling restless, Jim, feel free to pace a bit while we talk," I said. Really, you don't mind? Thanks a lot. He stood up and began to walk around, conducting his conversation with his arms as he spoke. This is great. Most people would get unnerved if I did this, but I really think better when I walk. Is that weird? You can imagine it doesn't go over big at work if I want to pace half the time. I don't know, I said. Maybe you just haven't found the right job. You sound like all my bosses. Is there a right job for me? I don't know if there's a right job for you, I said. For now, I'd just like to hear more of your story. Have you ever really told it to anyone before? No. Nobody can follow me. I go off on too many tangents, they all say. Well, you just keep talking and let me do the following. That's what I'm paid for.